In early 2024, a silent panic swept across the United States. While the media was deliberately distracted by the usual partisan political theater, millions of everyday Americans walked into their local pharmacies and discovered what happens when the system simply decides you can no longer buy your medication. Surprise! The Change Healthcare cyberattack paralyzed prescriptions nationwide. People with plenty of money in their bank accounts, holding valid, legally prescribed medications from their doctors, were abruptly turned away at the counter. Why? Because the invisible digital bridge connecting their physical identity to their systemic authorization had been severed. Size. It wasn't just a corporate accident or a temporary glitch. It was a trailer, a terrifying, real-world preview of the invisible architecture that is currently being built around you. Welcome to the era where your identity is no longer an inherent human right. It is a switch. A digital toggle that someone else, sitting in a boardroom or a government office, can flip off with a single, silent click. If you think this video is just another wild, paranoid theory about a distant dystopian future, you are already years behind the curve. I am going to show you the absolute, undeniable proof that your life is currently being downgraded into a revocable subscription software, and the mandatory updates are already being installed while you sleep. But before we look at the trap waiting for you tomorrow, we need to completely understand the invisible license you are unknowingly signing today. We have been deeply conditioned, over generations, to think of an ID as a simple piece of plastic sitting in our wallet. A physical object that proves you are who you say you are to a police officer or a bank teller. Erase that outdated concept from your mind immediately. Digital identity is not a document. It is a terms of service agreement. It is a conditional license to exist and operate in the modern economy. Listen to me very carefully, because this is the pivot on which your entire future rests. There is a massive, unbridgeable legal and philosophical gap between being a citizen and being a user. A citizen of the United States has fundamental, constitutional rights. The Fourth Amendment protects your physical body, your home, and your papers from unreasonable searches. The First Amendment protects your voice and your ability to dissent. Rights are inherent. They belong to you by birth. The government has to go through a grueling, highly public legal process in a courtroom in front of a jury of your peers to take them away from you. A user, on the other hand, has absolutely no rights. A user only has temporary permissions. Think about your social media accounts for a second. If you violate the arbitrary, ever-changing, vaguely worded community guidelines on X, Facebook, or YouTube, what happens? You are banned. Instantly. There is no judge. There is no jury. There is no due process. There is only an opaque algorithm and a locked screen telling you that your account has been terminated. Now, take a deep breath and apply that exact same digital architecture to your physical life. When your driver's license, your medical records, your bank accounts, your vehicle registration, and your passport are centralized into a single national digital identity, the government ceases to function as a constitutional republic. It becomes a tech platform, and you are instantly demoted from a citizen of the republic to a user of the state. If you violate the terms of service of society, you don't go to jail. That's too expensive and too visible. Your permissions are simply revoked. Your life sap is suspended. Are you beginning to see the sheer scale of the cage being lowered over you? But how did Americans, a people famously obsessed with individual liberty and independence, let this happen? The answer lies in a bureaucratic scam that was successfully pulled on your grandparents almost a century ago. Let's rewind the clock to 1936. The United States is desperately clawing its way out of the devastating economic crater of the Great Depression. The federal government introduces the Social Security number. The American public at the time was fiercely independent and deeply suspicious of federal overreach. The idea of being assigned a permanent tracking number by the government sounded terrifyingly similar to the totalitarian regimes that were rapidly rising across Europe. They hated it. To pacify the angry public, the government made a formal, ironclad promise. On the bottom of the original cardboard Social Security cards, they printed 3 words in bold, capital letters: not for identification. It was a lie, a calculated, temporary lie. It was supposed to be a simple bookkeeping tool exclusively for retirement benefits. Nothing more. Now, look at your life today. Try to open a basic checking account without handing over your social security number. Try to buy a house, rent an apartment, get a legal job, file your taxes, or even get a standard credit card. You cannot breathe, move, or transact in the American economy without that 9-digit code. This phenomenon is what intelligence agencies and bureaucrats call mission creep. It is the slow, methodical, bureaucratic expansion of a control system. It always starts as an optional convenience, a small administrative tool to make things easier or safer. Then, decade by decade, it quietly mutates into the mandatory prerequisite for basic survival. They used a flimsy piece of cardboard to catalog the 20th century. But paper is weak. Paper can be lost. Paper can be burned. What is coming next cannot be shredded, because what is coming next is etched directly into your biology. Before we look at the dark biometric endgame, we need to look at what is happening in the political battlegrounds right now, this very minute. Look at Florida. Look at Texas. Over the last few years, governors like Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott have aggressively signed legislation specifically banning central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, from operating within their state borders. Why are powerful, establishment politicians suddenly terrified of digital money? Because they have actually read the fine print of what is coming. A central bank digital currency is not like Bitcoin. Bitcoin represents decentralized freedom and financial autonomy. A CBDC represents centralized, programmable control. When you combine a centralized digital identity with programmable money, you cross the event horizon of total tyranny. The money sitting in your bank account is no longer just money. It is a government voucher with behavioral conditions attached to it. Imagine a highly probable scenario where the federal government, under international pressure, declares a national climate emergency. Your digital ID automatically tracks your personal carbon footprint. The algorithm notices you bought too much gasoline this month for your commute. You purchased too much red meat for your family. You go to the grocery store, you tap your phone to the terminal, and the payment is immediately declined. Your account isn't empty. You have the funds. Your money simply refuses to be spent on prohibited items. This is exactly why states like Texas and Florida are desperately trying to build a legislative firewall, because they understand the dark math of the 21st century. If money is programmable, then your absolute, unquestioning obedience becomes the mandatory requirement to spend it. If they control the switch to your identity, they control your behavior. But even a digital wallet on a smartphone can be hacked, spoofed, or intentionally abandoned in a drawer. The architects of this system know that perfectly well. They need a final anchor, an anchor that you can never, ever leave behind. Forget the federal government for a second. Look at Silicon Valley. Look at Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI and the architect behind ChatGPT. He launched a parallel project called Worldcoin. Its stated goal is to create a massive, new global digital identity and financial network. How do they verify that you are a unique human? With a metallic, futuristic sphere called the orb. All over the world, right now, people are voluntarily lining up in the streets, staring into this glowing silver ball, and letting it deeply scan their retinas in exchange for a few digital crypto tokens. They are literally selling the unique, complex mathematical map of their eyes for the price of a cheap dinner. The PR departments tell you it's for your own security. They say artificial intelligence is getting too advanced, too capable of mimicking humans, and we desperately need biometric proof of personhood to stop deepfakes and malicious bots from ruining the internet. They promise you will never have to remember a complicated password ever again. But here is the terrifying reality. Here is the psychological thriller you are currently living in. Why do they really want your body? Because your body is the only password you can never change. If someone steals your physical credit card, you call the bank and cancel it. If you forget your Apple ID password, you click a link and reset it in 2 minutes. But if your retinas, your fingerprints, and the unique geometric structure of your face become the ultimate keys to your digital ID, what exactly happens when the system locks you out? You cannot factory reset your face. You cannot grow new retinas in your bathroom sink. If the algorithm decides you have violated the terms of service of society and your biometric profile is flagged and blacklisted, you are finished. The automatic doors to the physical world will simply refuse to open for you. This is the absolute, definitive end of the American frontier. The entire mythos of America was built on the fundamental ability to escape. If you failed in the East, you could pack your wagons and move west. You could change your name, leave your dark past behind, and start completely over in a new town. America was the undisputed land of reinvention. The biometric lock murders the very concept of a second chance. If your body is your permanent digital barcode, there is nowhere left to run. You become a prisoner of your own flesh. Every surveillance camera on every street corner becomes a warden. Every automated payment terminal becomes a border checkpoint. You don't need to be thrown into a physical cell when the prison perfectly maps the exact dimensions of your body. Let's connect all the dots. In my previous videos, we talked about how Wall Street is deliberately pricing you out of your own home. We talked about how the war on gasoline and traditional vehicles is designed to restrict your freedom of movement. We talked about the engineered consolidation and monopolization of your food supply. But those elements were just the physical walls of the cage. Digital identity is the operating system that runs the entire facility. The Change Healthcare hack proved that the infrastructure to abruptly cut you off from vital, life-saving services is already fully operational. The history of the Social Security number proved that temporary government conveniences always, without exception, mutate into mandatory chains. Worldcoin and the relentless push for biometric verification prove that the final lock on your cell door will be your own biology. They will not force you into this system at gunpoint. They are far too smart for that. They will make it so incredibly convenient that you will practically beg for it. They will tell you it stops identity theft once and for all. They will tell you it guarantees faster tax refunds and easier travel. They will make it the absolute only way to access emergency stimulus checks or universal basic income during the next inevitable economic crisis. You will gladly, willingly trade your sovereign independence for a seamless user experience. But remember this, and never forget it. Freedom is not a downloadable app. Freedom is not a convenient feature granted to you by a server farm in California or a bureaucrat in Washington. Freedom is the raw, messy, inalienable right to exist in the physical world without having to constantly authenticate yourself to a machine. Once you accept that your identity is a digital license, you accept that your life is a privilege that can be revoked. And once you become a user of the state, it is only a matter of time before they update the terms of service.